The Dow Jones, the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ are having their worst day since September 2022. Polls show a big majority of voters say the economy is bad for them. They feel it. Critics say Vice President Kamala Harris will have to answer for yet another crisis as she tries to convince the nation she can actually fix the border, violent crime, high inflated prices on everything, and now the latest crisis, our stock market is in deep trouble. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. Major fears at this hour that we are barreling toward a recession. Here's a big warning sign. Last week's hugely disappointing July jobs report. Let's take a look now. And of course, in the foreground of all of this is what we're dealing with today. In the back rearview mirror, part of how we got here. Just 114,000 jobs added in July. That number is far below what we needed and far below what the Biden-Harris administration estimated of 175,000. Now, they've been boasting about jobs. We'll get into that. But right now, we are almost back where we started with them. This is bad. The unemployment rate also surged to 4.3%. And that rise is raising the specter of the Somme rule, which has accurately forecast every recession since the 1970s. Famed economist Claudia Somme herself is now weighing in.
The Somme rule in force at this moment.
It triggered, and if workers don't have paychecks, they can't spend, and then that's the momentum that gets going. So the volume is turned up louder than usual on the Somme rule. So I don't look at this and big picture say we are in a recession, but I look at this and I say we're not headed in a good direction at all.
So with all the political ads and claims of big money raised on the left, this is on their watch. And Kamala Harris wants to lead the march from the White House. One Republican strategist says VP Harris cannot avoid this topic or her administration's record.
The conditions in the country hasn't changed. They changed out their nominee, but they haven't changed out the inflation. They haven't changed out the economic anxiety that most working families are facing. And that's something she's still going to have to deal with because she's not an independent actor. She didn't land here, 6 weeks ago on a spaceship and said, hey, I'll take over. She's been sitting right next to Joe Biden for the last 4 years.
Well, it's worse than that because Joe Biden for the last 3.5, 4 years has been saying that Kamala Harris is always the last person in the room on all the big decisions that affect America. So she owns it. Fox Business's Hillary Vaughn is at the White House. Hillary, this is a tough spot for American workers to be in today.
Harris, it's a really tough spot, and it doesn't seem like the Harris campaign is interested in turning around the way things are going, the direction that they're going in. This is the worst jobs report that this administration has seen since 2021, the first year that Biden and Harris moved into the White House, backtracking progress that the Harris campaign has been bragging about on the campaign trail to voters. They want to own their economic wins, but they want to blame the economic bad on their predecessor. The Harris campaign spokesperson trying to distract from this poor report, talking about former President Trump's record, saying, quote, Donald Trump failed Americans as president, costing our economy millions of jobs and bringing us to the brink of recession. But we might be on the brink of a recession now under Harris's leadership. Economists at Goldman Sachs think a recession is more likely than it was before, raising the likelihood from 15 to 25% that we will head into a recession. But Democrats are not doubting their policies. They are confident that they need to keep doing what they have been doing.
Is there anything the administration is going to do differently now to work on it?
I mean, it's not a change in course, but it is a, continued commitment to the course that we've been on.
Are we in a recession?
We're definitely not in a recession.
But today, Trump's vice presidential pick, Senator J.D. Vance, is calling out Kamala Harris for not showing up today and calming economic fears, posting, quote, this moment could set off a real economic calamity around the globe. It requires steady leadership, the kind President Trump delivered for 4 years. Kamala Harris is too afraid to answer media questions and cannot lead us in these troubled times. Hashtag where's Kamala? And Harris, it's important to point out that up until this point, the Biden-Harris team had been so confident in how they handled the the economy that they named essentially Biden's economic policies Bidenomics. They used his name. It'll be interesting to see if Harris continues to use that phrase Bidenomics on the trail, because it doesn't seem like she's going to offer any new economic policy. She's certainly not going to do a 180.
Well,
Harris?
It's so interesting that you say that, because as time went on before Biden dropped out of the race, even he had stopped using Bidenomics, because they poll tested that just as everybody has, and they know that it wasn't working for them. But she has continued. I haven't seen her recently. Maybe she'll also stop using that word. Great to get the first report from you, Hillary. Thank you very much. New Fox polling shows the economy is by far the most important thing to voters right now in 4 key battleground states: Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, a state in which both candidates, Trump and Kamala Harris, have been spending some time in, mainly Trump at this point, because obviously he's been running longer. And he knows where the problem areas are in the economy and can hit those hard when he's on the ground. We'll see how she can do it. The issue is so important, in fact, it basically doubles their second pick, immigration. So immigration, we know, is huge. The economy now, especially on a day-to-day like today, reigns supreme among voters. Another recent national poll shows only 1 in 4 voters say they feel that our economy is excellent or in good condition. That leaves 75% of American voters, no matter what their party, who are unhappy with the way things currently are in the economy. And when it comes to the presumptive November matchup, a new Wall Street Journal report shows voters trust Trump more to handle the economy, and it's not even close. 12-point difference there. There's no margin of error on the planet where it's even close. All right, let's move forward with Ari Fleischer. He's been inside the White House, Fox News contributor, former White House press secretary. This is a tough day for everybody. And it can be said at this point that we can remember the policies that didn't deliver this, and we were in a pandemic, a coronavirus pandemic, and we didn't see this.
Yeah, Harris, it's not just been a bad day. It's been a bad 3 days. This sell-off began on Thursday last week, and since then, the market's dropped 2,000 points. So it's down 1,000 today, but Thursday and Friday added to it. 5% hit, 5% drop in the stock market since Thursday last week. Now, 3 days does not a recession make, but it sure makes you keep your eye on whether or not we're heading into a recession. And if you're the incumbent, which Kamala Harris is, this is perilous. You want stability, you want peace instead of peace and stability. She's got 2 wars around the world, maybe more, and potentially a recession. This is very bad news for any incumbent.
All right. And most importantly, because, I mean, all the candidates and the race and all that aside, this is bad news for American families, for American workers.
Sure.
You take a look at what happens when people they go to the mall, but they don't spend money. That's part of the problem here. And so companies are starting to feel that. I want to get to something that former President Trump posted on his Truth Social just a short time ago this morning. Stock markets are crashing. Job numbers are terrible. We are headed into World War III. And we have 2 of the most incompetent leaders in history. He puts leaders in quotes, as you see. This is not good. Of course, there is a massive market downturn. Kamala is even worse than what he calls Crooked Joe. Markets will never accept the radical left lunatic that destroyed San Francisco and California as a whole. Next move, the Great Depression of 2024. You can't play games with markets. Kamala, crash. Your response?
Yeah, I don't know that we're heading into World War III or the Great Depression, but we are in bad times. And I'm glad to see President Trump focus on that economic message. That is the Democrats' greatest vulnerability. And this has been an issue that has haunted previous presidents. When the economy goes south, when the market tanks, when fear of recession and the psychology of recession kicks in, people start to sit on their money, which creates a cycle that makes a recession more likely. So again, I don't like to panic over these things. We've all been around long enough to know markets go up and markets go down. We've been through previous significant drops in the market only to see them rebound and come back up. We don't know how this one is going to go. But certainly 3 months before an election, It is not good news for the incumbent. It's not good news, as you point out, for America. And it's also something that means Kamala Harris needs to take questions. She needs to let America see how she thinks about this. What does she think? Why isn't this heading toward a recession? What encouraging signs does she see? But she won't take questions. She won't expose the American people to her mind. And that makes you wonder if it's because she's hiding, that she's not capable of showing how she thinks, how she operates in a spontaneous, extemporaneous way. Joe Biden couldn't do it. She won't do it. And that's a problem.
Yeah, I don't know if it's as critical to hear from her. I know Hillary Vaughn said that, you know, there have been calls for her to speak today on this issue, as it is to have something to report to us that's good that she can do and that she's already begun doing. Because otherwise, it's just more words in a political campaign, and she's only been in it for a few days, but she's owned every piece of what we're living right now. Because as the president says, she's always the last person in the room when the big decisions are made and they affect us. Let's stay with the topic, though, of her record. The VP turned presumptive Democratic nominee is about to announce a vice presidential pick of her own. Could be as early as today. We don't know. Tomorrow, Kamala Harris is set to appear with her running mate, potentially, in Philadelphia. Her calendar has been packed with events just like the one set for tomorrow. Carefully scripted. Critics say that's no way to convince Americans she's ready to be commander-in-chief. Harris has chatted with reporters, but still not done in-depth interviews. Now, this is what Ari is just now telling us on this one topic of the economy, but apparently not on anything. No news conference have we seen from her yet. The pressure for her to face the press is growing. Watch this.
She hasn't answered a single question, not one single question by the media, Ed. She's only had one single unscripted moment Thursday night at Andrews Air Force Base welcoming those hostages back. And she served up the kind of incomprehensible word salad for which she's become famous. When she has to encounter the media, and I'm sure you're going to insist that she does, Kamala Harris has only been the nominee for 2 weeks and hasn't answered a single question.
Ari.
Yeah, that is a heart of the issue. And the American people deserve to see where this new candidate stands and what she is capable of. But she's trying to run out the clock. And one of the reasons she's trying to run out the clock is because she knows and her staff knows that the American press corps will let her do so. Could you imagine if the White House press corps went into rebellion and demanded, where is she? How come she won't? And if all the stories are only about Harris won't take questions, Harris is hiding, as opposed to what she wants them to cover, that would mean the press corps is taking Donald Trump's side. They'll never do that, Harris. This is why the American media has broken down. It used to be, and it wasn't so long ago, that the press would pressure both parties to do what's right, to do their job for the American people. But the last thing the American press corps will do is put pressure on Kamala Harris if it benefits Donald Trump. So that's why she knows, and her staff knows, that they can get away with this.
Look,
a Republican couldn't get away with it. Are you kidding?
No.
If Trump had to leave the ticket and you put somebody else on, the press would kill that other candidate until they spoke. Harris, it's a free pass.
You know, there's one question today. How did Donald Trump know, and you didn't, Kamala Harris, about the economy? You've been there the entire time. It's your turn, along with Biden. Ari Fleischer, you nailed it. Thank you. Vice President Kamala Harris running like the wind from her far-left positions. She's angering progressives. Uh-oh. But will she convince moderates that she means it this time? That she's really with them? Does she mean it? Plus, Israel is bracing for an attack by Iran that could come as early as today.
How we can actually go ahead and ensure the defense of Israel is going to be very key here. But we have to understand Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel has a right to go after these Iranian militias. Iran, at the end of the day, is the ultimate terrorist organization.
President Biden better go get Kamala Harris since she has to be in the room. This is critical. He's going to convene his National Security Council today to talk about that crisis, one of the many going on in his presidency right now. Whether the United States will go all in for our closest ally in the Middle East and take on the Islamic Republic is yet to be seen. Former military intelligence officer Robert Greenway is in focus next. Imagine being on the ground in Israel and watching that come from next door, the Hezbollah terrorists firing rockets into northern Israel last night. You know that's one of the terror groups that are funded and basically directed by Iran. The entire Middle East now is on high alert as the U.S. reportedly believes Iran will directly attack Israel as soon as today. President Biden is expected to gather his National Security Council for a meeting in the Situation Room just a few hours from now. It has been nearly a week since a top Hamas political leader was killed in Iran and a Hezbollah commander was killed in Lebanon. Critics say the Biden-Harris administration got us here.
This administration got this thing wrong from the very beginning. The Houthis are now attacking U.S. ships, commercial ships and U.S. military ships, and they fired a drone into Israel. Iran funds Hezbollah, they fund Hamas. This could have been completely preventable. This is an absolute disaster brought to you by really bad decisions by the Biden-Harris administration.
And our nation is boosting military presence in the region. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin announced the Pentagon will deploy additional fighter jets and Navy warships, including cruisers and destroyers, which can shoot down ballistic missiles. Trey Yingst in Haifa, Israel, with more now. How that nation where you are is preparing for what we know or highly suspect will be an imminent attack. Trey.
Yeah, Harris, good morning. Israel is on edge today as the country braces for an attack from Iran and its proxies. The Wall Street Journal reports that Iran told U.S. and Arab diplomats it didn't care if a counterattack caused a war in the region. We do know just yesterday, Jordan's foreign minister traveled to Iran for a meeting. President Biden scheduled to speak with Jordanian King Abdullah II today, but there has been very little public Iranian interaction with those trying to avert a crisis. With this in mind, Israel is taking steps to prepare for a prolonged conflict, as reports indicate the initial Iranian response could come in waves and include extensive missile and drone attacks. Iran's top IRGC general saying this today.
When it receives a firm response, it will realize it has been wrong. They keep making miscalculations. They repeated this mistake this time too. They will once again get a taste of our punishment. They will find out when, where, and how we will retaliate. It is ambiguous and indeterminate.
A document sent to mayors of northern cities told officials here to prepare for water outages, power cuts, and evacuations. And in Jerusalem, an underground command bunker for government officials was opened by the Shin Bet security agency. Preparations for war in the north and with Iran comes as fighting rages on inside the Gaza Strip. Israeli negotiators traveled to Cairo, Egypt this weekend for talks about a possible ceasefire, but made no progress. Israel has ramped up strikes against Gaza in recent days, going after Hamas, but killing dozens of civilians in the process. Now today, the top CENTCOM general, Michael Kurilla, is meeting with Israel's defense minister, Yoav Gallant. It gives you just a taste of the interactions and coordination between the Americans and the Israelis amid this heightened state of tension. Harris?
That's all very important to know. Put this into context for us. We appreciate that, Trey. Robert Greenway, director of the Center for National Defense at Heritage Foundation, also a former Defense Intelligence Agency intel officer, and I want to add this, former Green Beret. And so we really want to tap into, first of all, obviously the global politics and all of this, but then I want to lean on your military acumen as well. Let's start with where we are right now in the Middle East and the part that the U.S. must play right now.
Thanks for having me on, Harris. Look, the previous comments about a series of disastrous policy choices that have dismantled our deterrence got us to this point. It's not simply what happened on October the 7th or even the Iranian strikes in April. A series of decisions got us to this point where Iran judges there is no opposition to their exercise of hegemony in the Middle East. And look, the impact can't be divorced from the economic situation. They're coinciding with one another. And the economic impacts of disruption to the Red Sea and the forecasting potential disruption to global energy markets are contributing to what's happening in the markets. That's likely to get worse. As Trey indicated, we could see a series of actions taken by Iran for which little time and preparation can occur, and from which will occur from a variety of axes all around the compass points of the Middle East. I would also add that we can't exclude attacks in Europe attacks in Asia, and attacks in the United States from Iranian operatives and their surrogates and proxies.
I want to ask about the series of actions by Iran, because when you say that, it makes me understand better what you just described, and that is they know we're hurting economically today. They're watching the markets. They see this, and you say that it's tied to the energy and whether or not we can get to those things that feed our energy needs here. Those shipping lanes and what they've been doing, and also China with shipping lanes there, that matters now.
And there's no question the disruption of shipping in the Red Sea from Iranian-sponsored Houthis have already increased commodity prices as much as 20% in many markets, including our own, contributing to the inflation in the United States. That's just a foretaste of what could occur if global energy markets are disrupted further at a time when the strategic petroleum reserve has been depleted in the United States by the current administration for political purposes. The pain could be severe and acute. It could contribute to, or it certainly could accelerate, the trajectory towards recession that many people are discussing today.
How do you think Israel feels about the current administration right now?
I think disappointment would be an understatement. I think there's disgust in many quarters. Instead of supporting Israel in their endeavors to defend themselves in the region, we have constrained Israel and allowed their largest opponents, their chief adversaries, to attack them and the United States largely at will. And so Iran now is shoring up its gains in the Middle East, and this is the result of a policy of integrating and appeasing Iran into the region, which the current U.S. administration has made their policy imperative. It's no wonder why Israel is sorely disappointed in the administration's policies that got us to this point.
All right, I'm going to ask for grace from my team. I have to get to the military now. Real quickly, what should we be doing militarily at this point? Are we doing all that we can?
Well, no, I don't think that we are. The introduction of military forces is helpful. We need to accelerate the provision of capabilities delayed to Israel, and we need to look to our own defenses inside the United States, recognizing Iran has capabilities across the world and in the United States because of our open borders. This has to be done immediately.
Yeah, I don't think we can have a discussion without talking about the number of terrorists or people on a terrorist suspected list that have crossed under this administration. I just don't think you can have this conversation. So I'm glad you brought up border, because it factors in mightily now. Robert Greenway, it is always a pleasure to get your expertise and spend time with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Harris.
Hurricane Debbie is hitting Florida after making landfall a few hours ago. The flooding could be historic, catastrophic. The storm surge could kill. Hundreds of thousands of our citizens are now already without electricity and other forms of utilities now as the storm moves northeast. And this is happening. Vice President Kamala Harris is trying to run away from her far-left positions. We've touched on it a bit. We'll go deeper. The Trump campaign says she can't hide.
She is a radical. This is who she is. And as much as her aides are running from her record, Kamala Harris, at the least, should...
Fox News alert. Hurricane Debbie is now over northern Florida's Gulf Coast, and we have just confirmed one person has died in the storm. Millions of people are in danger. The Category 1 storm made landfall about 4 hours ago in the state's Big Bend area. Meteorologists are predicting the flooding and storm surge will be catastrophic. Debbie has already knocked out electrical power and other utilities for more than 300,000 customers. And again, the storm is sitting in that area above northern Florida's Gulf Coast. One American killed. Fox Weather's Nicole Valdez is 45 miles east of Tallahassee. Nicole.
Harris, good morning. Here in Madison County, we are feeling some of the worst of the outer bands of now tropical storm Debbie, not only with heavy rain coming down, but strong wind gusts you'll notice behind me, sort of creating that illusion of movement as you take a look at the road behind me. A pretty strong figure here, the Madison County Courthouse just over my shoulder. As you look at the deserted roads behind me, that's what we want to see when you have conditions that are this bad. Knowing that no one should be driving. And unfortunately, we know of at least 2 people now in the Sunshine State that have lost their lives, some in cars. But I'll point you to an image over here that gives you a sort of grim reality, a tattered American flag that's been shredded in the force of these winds. Governor Ron DeSantis, of course, warning Floridians to brace for impact here as definitely flooding and rain is one of the top concerns with this storm. And power outages, of course, expected. They're ongoing right now, Harris, and they could last for days.
Nicole, thank you very much. And unfortunately, I can now confirm that there are 2 people dead in the storm now as it moves across northern Florida's Gulf Coast. Nicole, thank you very much. Critics are piling on Vice President Kamala Harris for all those flip-flopping moves that she's doing on liberal policies that she has backed and promoted for quite some time. From energy, the environment, to the border, police, healthcare. Well, we'll just scroll it because the list is long. Here she is, her own words.
We must have and adopt a Green New Deal. There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. Would you ban offshore drilling? Yes.
Where do you stand on defund the police?
Look, right. So here's the thing. Defund the police. The issue behind it is that we need to reimagine how we are creating safety. We're not going to treat people who are undocumented and cross the border as criminals. That's correct. That is correct. I think there's no question that we've got to critically re-examine ICE.
You support the Medicare for All bill. So for people out there who like their insurance, they don't get to keep it?
Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on. Yeah, I am radical. I do believe that we need to get radical about what we are doing and take it seriously.
But she's still laughing while she says she's radical. But she's owning it, so we can't forget. Now she's reversed course on many of those positions. Still laughing, I would imagine. Former Trump White House advisor Stephen Miller doesn't buy any of it.
What you have seen in these last few weeks with the corporate leftist media, the Democrat Party, and their surrogates trying to reinvent and rewrite the history of the most liberal senator and the most liberal vice president in American history is so far beyond gaslighting, so far beyond indoctrination, so far beyond. This is an attempt to pull off the greatest hoax in American history.
One opinion piece with this, quote, since becoming the presumptive Democratic nominee with absolutely 0 popular votes, she has not addressed a single one of those positions. Instead, her spokespeople have insisted that she doesn't hold those extreme positions. Neither she nor her spokespeople have explained why or when she changed her mind, end quote. You got the part where she says, yes, I'm radical and we need to get radical. It wasn't confusing. We understand it. Own it. Democratic Senator LaFonza Butler is defending the change now, the pivot, the flip-flopping that Kamala Harris is doing.
What do you think that voters should think when she's reversed herself on several issues just in the last 4 years?
I think that voters should think that she's a human being who learns new things every single day.
So no concern about flip-flopping?
No concern about flip-flopping.
Power panel now, Jessica Patterson, California GOP chairwoman, and David Carlucci, former Democratic state senator from New York. Do you defend the flip-flopping, David? And how do you, if so?
Well, Kamala Harris has a 20-year record in elected office.
Yes,
That's
we've seen it.
It's 3 times longer than you have Vance and
it
Trump
doesn't match
combined.
what she's saying now. So do you defend her flip-flopping?
Look, and we evolve as politicians, and that's what we ask our politicians to do. Just ask Donald Trump. He went from pro-choice to pro-life to now ambiguous. You asked J.D. Vance, he went from calling Trump America's Hitler to now running as his running mate. So we evolve as politicians. So I think this flip-flop